Just 1 month today, and Britain will decide whether it wants to be in or out of the EU.
With each side of the argument making its claims and counterclaims, how do we tell fact from fiction? Well, this man knows. Will Moy is from Full Fact, an independent fact-checking organisation, not to be confused with Full Fact, which we were just talking about with Dr. Hillary. So we're going to talk through some of the key issues. We have been warned that leaving the EU would bring economic uncertainty. And of course, our main news this morning, it is a fact that the Treasury is claiming economic growth could fall by as much as 6%.
But it may not be a fact that may happen. Will, what's the answer?
Well, there's another big, thick report coming out today. We haven't seen it yet, and it will take a bit of time to dig into it and see whether it adds up. But what it sounds like they've done is taken the big basic assumption that if we leave, there'll be lots of uncertainty, fed that into an economic model and come up with these numbers, 6% being their worst case scenario. That's about the same size of the shrinking of the economy in the 2008 recession, so it's quite a big deal.
Is it an unreasonable assumption? I mean, doesn't uncertainty always lead to a form of recession in some way if it's on this scale?
Well, it's certainly something that economists on both sides of the argument seem to accept, actually, that there will be some uncertainty and that will be bad for the economy in the short term. Where the economists get a lot more disagreeing is in the medium term and in the long term. What does that mean? Most economists do seem to think that it will be bad for the economy over the longer term too.
Can we just get to one fact which constantly gets misinterpreted, which is actually what we give the EU in reality when you get the rebates and the other subsidies and so on? What is the reality of that figure?
OK, so the £350 million a week number that you will have heard a lot, that's what we would pay if we didn't have a rebate. So Margaret Thatcher went and negotiated a discount on our membership fee. Without it, we would pay...
And that discount is how much?
That's about £100 million a week.
So that takes us down to 250 million a week.
But can I just interject? But we do hand over 350 million a week and then get 100 million back, do we?
No, not really. So the discount is applied exactly as if you were going to buy a jacket in a shop. The discount is applied before you pay for it.
So we never hand over 350 million
We
pounds a
send
week.
£250 million a week, roughly.
And what do we get back
EU.
further in subsidies and stuff?
Well, about £85 million a week is spent by the EU in the UK. Most of that goes to subsidising farmers or subsidising poorer areas of the country.
OK, which takes us to this point of disagreements on the NHS, because Vote Leave campaigners say we could spend more money on the health service if we stopped handing over that £350 million a week to Brussels. Now, you say we don't hand over 350 million a week. If we hand over 250 million a week, could we just use that for the NHS?
Well, we couldn't use all of it because we're already having some of it spent in the UK, as I said. So unless you're willing to say we will get rid of those payments to farmers, we will get rid of those payments to poorer areas, it's not all available to be spent on the NHS. And that's why the UK Statistics Authority, the watchdog, called that argument potentially misleading. So there is some money there, but it's not £350 million a week that would suddenly be available for the NHS.
OK, the final one, migration security. Right. So many scare stories about this on both sides. What is the reality if we left Europe, do you think, in terms of migration and national security?
Well, the big claim here is the stronger in claim that we have control over our own borders. And what they mean by that is we can check the passports of anyone coming into the country, even EU citizens. My hunch is that's not what most people mean by controlling your own borders, though. What most people mean, I think, is controlling whether or not people can come into the country. And when you're a member of the EU, you can't control whether other EU citizens come into the country. You can't turn them down for not having enough skills. You can't turn them down for having a criminal record. You can only turn them down on quite tight grounds about public safety and things like that. Now, the same is true in the other direction. We can go to any other EU country. But control of your borders, for most people, I think, means more than passport checks, more than what Stronger In are saying it means.
That's interesting, because then there's not an actual fact, is there? It's how you define control.
I like Will. I think we should bring Will back with his fact-checking, because, of course, half of these aren't actually facts.
No,
they're things that we get told are facts. Actually, they are very subjective, often very biased interpretation
and you have to make your own minds up about it. That's the thing. You know, you need to be given both sides of it, and you need to be given the opportunity to make your own mind up. And that's why the campaigns are frustrating.
Well, you have to be, don't you?
Say again?
You have to be neutral, don't you?
We have to be neutral.
Will you vote? yourself?
I will vote, and that
Will
will
we
be...
ever know what you voted?
Absolutely not. It would be against the rules. I would be fired if I said that I'm on one side or another of
But
any
presumably you would
political
vote from a
debate.
pure fact-based position.
There is no pure fact-based decision on this referendum. No set of facts will make your mind up for you. What they may do is help you decide which issues you care more about or less about, and who you trust more or less.
Okay.
But
Well,
actually, it's about your judgment of what matters.
That's the best fact we've heard all
It is.
morning. You're
Well,
absolutely right.
good to talk
Thanks
to
very
you.
much
Very
indeed.
clear analysis there of the lack of facts in the fact world.
Indeed. I think people feel flooded with facts, don't they, in this debate?
You have to simplify it, because actually even that issue of how much we give the European Union is just being clouded in nonsense.
Yes, I know. Anyway, talking to Ian Duncan-Smith a little bit more about that later on. Now, 24 minutes.